Okay, so we were in the middle of something. We were discussing the Devorah's idea. Again, it's a well-known idea. It's a Mishnah in Brachos, really, that a person is obligated to be grateful or to thank Hashem even for the difficulties of life. Kishem shemavarech al ha-taiva, kach mavarech al ha-ra. And one of the derivations is that you should love Hashem. It says in Kriya Shema b'chol ma'odecha, with all of your might. And one of the interpretations is b'chol mida umida shu moded l'cha, in every type of characteristic that he gives you. So we were in the middle. I was sharing with you a vort from Rav Tzadok of Lublin. If you'll remember, he asked the question that if we paskin that the three tefillas of Shachris, Mincha, and Maariv come from the Avos, that Avraham Avinu was Mesakein Shachris, and Yitzchak was Mesakein Mincha, and Yaakov was Mesakein Maariv, then how could it be the case that the davening of Maariv is optional? Because we actually paskin that the only reason I'm mechuyev to daven Maariv is because it's become a minhag that Klal Yisrael has accepted, but at its inception, Maariv was an optional prayer. How could that be? Why should the prayer of Yaakov Avinu be inferior to the prayer of Avraham and Yitzchak? Avraham and Yitzchak's prayer is a chayva. Why would Yaakov's prayer be a rishus? So we began discussing the idea that each of the three tefillas has a distinct emotional mood, that even though we say the same Shmona Esrei, we say the same words, but the emotion of Shachris is not the same as the emotion of Mincha, and the emotion of Mincha is not the same as the emotion of Arvis. Shachris, which ideally, just to review a little bit, is the very beginning of the day as the sun rises, because the optimal time to daven, Tfilas Shachris, I mean the Shmon Esrei of Shachris, is with the rising of the sun. So the dominant mood of Shachris is gratitude, appreciation, joy for the brachos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into your lives. And that's the symbol of a new day. You're leaving the darkness. You're coming into a new day. You're joining the symphony of the universe in praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as there is a renewal, so to speak, of Maisa Breishus. That's why I've always thought, I remember, Vasikin Minyanim today tend to be very OCD type places. They're looking at atomic clocks to be sure that you're not a second, or a tenth of a second, a hundredth of a second past the time. So I remember that I once had to daven in a Vasikin Minyan. It was my father's yahrzeit, and I had to be somewhere. So I had to get up, much earlier than I normally might get up, and I also had to daven for the Yomad. So they warned me that we really are very makbid Vasikin. You got to start Shmona Esrei with sunrise. Now, this was in a windowless basement. There was literally no windows bichlal, so we had nothing to do with the sun. But they had what they call an atomic clock that measured time in hundredths of seconds. And whatever, so I managed to get through. But afterwards, they told me I could never daven for the Amud there again, because I think I was 2 seconds late in terms of nates. Therefore, they said, it's not acceptable. Our minyan, we have to be very, very exact. So again, you think about this. In some ways, this is a classic example of, the trees blocking your view of the forest. First of all, Chazal didn't have atomic clocks, and they obviously approximated sunrise. So to say there's some chiyuv that you got to get it down to a hundredth of a second is mistama, not emes. Even if the technology changes, that would not probably create a different definition of what is vasikin. But second of all, you're focusing on the clock. Vasikin is about, I won't say focusing on the sun, but there is a concept that you become part of the universe, singing a song of praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But be it as it may, the dominant emotion of Shachris is one of gratitude and joy, and this was Avraham Avinu's Avodah in particular, because Avraham Avinu saw in the Bria, saw in the creation, benevolence and goodness. As we said, the reason why Avraham Avinu was an Ish Chesed was precisely because that is how he perceived HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In fact, that's the famous word by the Akedah. Why is the Akedah called the trial of Avraham? It's not called the trial of Yitzchak. It's not called the Nisayan of Yitzchak. The Torah itself says, Elokim Nisas Avram, and you can't just say, well, Yitzchak was a little kid, he's just doing what he's told. No, Yitzchak was a 37-year-old man. And when Yitzchak knew that he was going to be shechted, Yitzchak also was willing to give his life. So why isn't it called the Nisayan of Yitzchak? Why is it called the Nisayan of Abraham? So the Mekubalim answer, very relatively straightforward, that Yitzchak Avinu represented Gevurah. He saw, he understood, and he internalized the strictness of God, the judgment of God. So if God calls upon a person to die, he understands that. That's part of his midah. That is consistent with his understanding of God. But Avraham Avinu, whose whole understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was based on the idea of chesed, this was a fundamental, it's not just, as hard as it is for a father to kill his son, obviously, on a human level, that's a tremendous nisayon. I'm not denying that. But even more deeply than that, it was a fundamental contradiction to his understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. His whole life he had seen HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a certain light. And now his whole understanding, his whole conception of what God is being destroyed. And that was the Nisayan. His Emunah was so great that he was able to weather that challenge. But basically, Avraham Avinu became a man of chesed because he saw chesed in the Bria. So Avraham Avinu's prayer is the prayer of seeing Hashem's benevolence in creation. Mincha, you'll recall, is the time of panic. Because the ideal time for Mincha, at least Rav Tzadok is following this view, is Machlokes Halacha, is Mincha Ketana, which is 2.5 shows, Samanios, before nightfall. And then already you begin to see the shadows of the evening, etc. So you're still in daylight, but you're losing things. Things are slipping away, la'at, la'at. So therefore, Mincha is the prayer where a person still has the blessings of Hashem, but they feel in a state of danger. They feel in a state of sakana. They feel in a state that things are slipping away from them, that the day is yielding to the darkness. This was the Avodah of Yitzchak. Yitzchak lived in Eretz Yisrael. Yitzchak Avinu never left Eretz Yisrael. But the 400 years of Galus begin in the life of Yitzchak. There was already this sense that the shadows of the evening are coming. So that's Mincha. In fact, and I mentioned even externally, there's a certain panic about Mincha, not so much in yeshiva, but when you're in the working world, you're in the street, you're caught. So in Yerushalayim, it's not so bad, because if you're really, really desperate, just daven in the street, and there's no, you can get away with that here. But, in the United States, other places, you're looking for a place, a private place, etc. Mincha is panicky. In fact, there's an old joke. What is the definition of a relaxed yid? What does it mean to be a relaxed yid? So they say, when two conditions are met, you're relaxed. One is your milchik, and the other is you daven mincha, because those are the two worries that the person always have. So then you're okay. It's a done deal when you have those two conditions. Okay. So now this takes us where we were. So now let's look at davening Maariv. What's Maariv? So Yaakov Avinu was Masakin Maariv. Now let's remember, when was he Masakin Maariv? What are the psukim that talk about Yaakov Avinu doing Maariv? So Yaakov Avinu had just taken the brachos that Yitzchak had intended to give Esav, and Yaakov got those brachos. Esav wants to kill him. Esav wants to murder him. So Yaakov Avinu and Esav, they're not youngsters. They are actually 63 years old at the time of this story. Rashi, at the end of Parshas Toldos, gives a very intricate cheshbon. I won't go into it. It's based on the Gemara and Megillah, but the cheshbon was Yaakov Avinu was 63 at the time that he's running away. So, number one, he doesn't have a wife. He has no children. Number two, his life is being threatened. Number three, Eliphaz, the son of Esav, stripped him of all of his wealth, so he's poverty-stricken. No wife, no children, no possessions. That's what he means when he says, I crossed the Yarden only with my staff. Right, he says many years later. And his life is threatened. And he's leaving the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. And he thinks he will never see his father again. L'maisa he does, because Yitzchak lives much longer. But Yaakov thinks he'll never see Yitzchak again. Yaakov, in fact, never sees Rivka again. And one also has to know that Yaakov Avinu is filled with fear and trepidation about going to Lavan's house. Because if Esav is threatening Yaakov's physical survival, Yaakov is schrecklichly afraid, totally afraid, that Lavan, with the cheating and the deception, will destroy his ruchnius, destroy whatever children that he has, etc. In many, many ways, that's what the Chassam Sofer says in the famous passage of the Haggadah, Pesach night. We say Lavan is worse than Paro, because Paro only wanted to kill the males, and Lavan wanted to destroy everybody. And in Pashat Pshat, we have a lot of problems. What do you mean Lavan wanted to destroy? Where do you see Lavan wanted to destroy everybody? Right, there are different answers to that. But the Chassam Sofer says that it doesn't mean Lavan wanted to take a knife and murder his children and grandchildren. But it means Lavan would have destroyed them spiritually. And in many, many ways, that would even be worse. In fact, I don't want to get into a controversial topic, but one of the issues that sometimes comes up a lot is, why did the Gedolim not encourage during the Holocaust, encourage widespread immigration to the United States? Because there were years where people could have gotten out in the early years, and that would have been a safe haven. And we don't find that many Gedolim calling. The Chavetz Chaim, for example, didn't tell people. Well, he died in 1933, died relatively early, but whatever it is, Rav Chaim Moser, Gedolim who were alive, when Hitler was already doing stuff. Why didn't they encourage immigration to America? And the standard answer was that America was a treifa medina, meaning to say the chances in those days that your children would be Shomer Shabbos in America, forget about yeshivas, would be Shomer Shabbos in America, were very, 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 very small. So people say, well, so what? So what are you saying? You're saying, don't take my family to America because they might become Mechalelei Shabbos, and instead condemn them to die in a concentration camp? Okay, I don't want to answer that question directly, but these are things that one has to think about. Gadol hamachtiyai Yaiser mi'ahorgai. He who causes someone else to sin, that's even worse than physically killing them. So these are cheshbonos. Again, I'm certainly not giving any type of psak halacha here. I'm just explaining the thinking. And this is what the Chassam Sofer says. Lavan bikesh la'akar es hakol. Pare wanted to physically destroy a segment of Am Yisrael. Lavan wanted to destroy us in Ruchnius, and that would have even been worse. So if we add up the situation, look at all of the negativities that Yaakov Avinu is facing. His physical life is threatened from Esav. But he's going from the frying pan to the fire to face the spiritual challenge of Lavan. He has no children. He has no wife. He's leaving Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. He's leaving his father, whom he thinks he will never see again. He's leaving his mother, who he will never see again. He's an Ani, Eliphaz. Actually, Eliphaz, it's interesting, Eliphaz has according to the Midrashim, Eliphaz has a very, very, very interesting second life. Because in the book of Eov, Eov is, I won't say comforted because they didn't comfort him, but Eov is visited by three friends who try to give him comfort and the like. And the friend that has the longest speeches of all the three friends is Eliphaz. And Eliphaz is the most philosophical of the friends. He talks about emunah, he talks about bitachon, he talks about the goodness of God. Eliphaz basically sounds like a pretty righteous guy. Now, the only other place where the name Eliphaz is mentioned is as the son of Esav. Now, in Pshuto Shel Mikra, you're not mechuyev to say it's the same person. No, just people with the same name. But Chazal actually say that the Eliphaz in the book of Eov is none other than Eliphaz, the son of Esav, who became, not a ger, didn't become Jewish necessarily, but he became a righteous ben Noach. And he became one who gave Musar Shmuzim on Emunah and the like. And Chazal say that Eliphaz had a certain righteousness even when Yaakov was running away, because he took Yaakov's wealth, because he knew the teaching of Chazal, that an ani, a poor person, is like a dead person. So he figured, hey, I take away his wealth, so it's like I killed him. That way, the gezerah of Misa is going to be fulfilled that way, and that way Yaakov's life will be saved. So Eliphaz was mechabein l'shem shemayim in that way. Okay, but be it as it may. Yaakov at that moment, oh, by the way, and just to add to something, Vayivka b'makam, Yaakov stopped, and the drasha, that pigia, encountering, is tefillah. Chazal say, the sun set all of a sudden early. It's the day, and the day becomes dark, and he has to stop. That's kind of a metaphor for his life. Everything is dark. So Yaakov cannot be grateful to Hashem for all of the loving kindness. And Yaakov doesn't even have the panic of Mincha where you still have everything, but it's slipping away. Yaakov has hit rock bottom. Yaakov is in the darkness. Yaakov, everything is lost. B'derech HaTeva, there's no hope. B'derech HaTeva, there's no way out. That's where Maariv comes in. So says Rav Tzadok, if the pshat is Shachris is the prayer of gratitude, and Mincha is the prayer of panic, Maariv is the prayer of Emunah. Because Emunah is what you have when everything else has been taken away from you. Emunah is what you have in the concentration camp. Emunah is what you have when all you see in your life is darkness. Emunah says, I still know Hashem is here. I still know Hashem is taking care of me. I still know Hashem cares. But that's a great madrega, the madrega of Emunah. This explains the idea of why in the Kriya Shema of the morning, after we finish the Shema, we say, Emes v'yatziv. God's truth, yatziv, is firmly standing up. Because when I see the goodness of Hashem in the mornings of my life, morning, so I see that truth. It's right in front of my eyes. At night, which is symbolic of Hester Panim, concealment of Hashem, where things, it doesn't look like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is taking care of me. Emes, God's truth, is bi'amunah, comes from my faith. I have faith in that truth, even though I don't see it. And this famous Chassidish Vort, in Mizmor Tzadik Beis, Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbos, we say every Friday night, Shabbos morning too. Lahagid ba'bayker chastecha ve'emunascha ba'leilos. So what does David HaMelech say? Lahagid ba'bayker. In the morning I declare your loving kindness. Ve'emunascha. And your faith, meaning the faith I have in you, at night. So the Hasidic Sfarim all say, it's a very famous machshava, that morning and night are symbolic of the different stages that a person goes through in their lives. There are times in our lives that are morning times, morning, M-O-R-N-I-N-G, where you see joy and you see success and you see simcha and you see accomplishment. And as I experience those mornings, M-O-R-N-I-N-G, I say, Lahagid Rabbaikir Chastecha, I declare in those mornings your great loving kindness. But then there are times in life which are dark times times of darkness. They can be illness, they can be poverty, they can be depression. They can be failures of all sorts of types, major or minor. You know, if you're a sixth grader, this is more of an American mashal, it doesn't apply to the people who live in Israel, but if your sixth grader didn't make the basketball team, you know, in his day school, you know, in the overall scheme of things, it's not a big deal. But to the sixth grader, it is a big deal, you know. It's like God is punishing me or whatever it would be. And but the message is, emunascha b'leilos. In those dark moments of time, you have emunah. So Maariv is the prayer of emunah. So with this, Rav Tzadok says so beautifully, let's go back to our original question. Why would Maariv be an optional prayer if Yaakov Avinu was Masakin Maariv, while Shachris and Mincha, which is Avram and Yitzchak, are obligatory prayers? Says Rav Tzadok, maybe we're making a mistake with our assumption. We're assuming in the question that if something is optional, it's less important. It's only optional. You don't have to do it. Maybe it's the opposite in this way. Something that is a chiyuv, anything that's obligatory, is what we call davar hashava l'chol nefesh. Everybody has to do it. Every bar mitzvah boy, bas mitzvah girl has to do it. It's something that is expected. So says Rav Tzadok, what Shachris and Mincha represent is a relatively straightforward madrega that every bar mitzvah boy, bas mitzvah girl, I'm assuming women have to daven, that's another machlokas, can aspire to. A Shachris, gratitude for what God has given you. Well, that's basic. Every kid has to learn. Say please, say thank you, be grateful. Look at your life, be grateful for what Hashem gave you. Even a dumb animal has gratitude. The Navi Yeshayahu said, Yada Shor Kainehu. Even the ox knows its master. V'chamor evus ba'alav. And the donkey appreciates the feeding trough of his owner. Hakaras hatov, right? A dog will be grateful. I remember I had lived in a neighborhood for a few years, from the time I think it was 6 to 9. And there was a stray dog that used to wander around. So I fed the dog. And the dog became very attached to me, even though it wasn't my dog. I don't know who owned the dog, but every time the dog saw me, you know. So then we moved when I was 9, and the next time I was in the neighborhood, it was like 4 years later. I was 13, I have to be in the same neighborhood. And this dog is still a stray dog, still wandering around, the same dog. And the dog stared at me, and he wanted to see if I was the same person he remembered, and he was so excited. That's the one thing about a dog. They're always, if you're on their good side, they're very excited to see you. That's why I tell people often getting a dog is a good idea if you're lonely or whatever it is. And the dog remembered. The dog was so grateful. Now, some dog psychologists, there is such an industry, actually say dogs do not feel gratitude. They're just manipulating you. They know that if they behave a certain way, they will get a certain response. So they know they're supposed to jump up and be happy, act as if they're happy to see you. I don't know. I personally like to think the other way. But be it as it may, the Navi Yeshayahu does say that even animals have gratitude. So Shachris is a chova. Davar hashava l'chol nefesh. Mincha? Well, you know the old saying, no atheists in foxholes, that when you're on the verge of losing things, you turn to God. Because, you never know, right? The atheist says, listen, I'm hedging my bets. But Maariv is a much higher madrega, because Maariv is you've lost everything. And there seems to be no hope. And as a result, you get crushed, you get defeated, you get despondent. To have faith under those circumstances cannot yet be concretized as a chova, It's an aspiration. It's a level to which we aspire, but it's not yet the madrega of chova. So Rav Tzadok says it's a beautiful thing. Maariv is a rishus, not because it is less important, but precisely because it represents a madrega that we work towards, but it's not yet a davar hashava l'chol nefesh for the lowest levels of a bar mitzvah boy, bas mitzvah girl, or the like. Right? So all of this, once again, this is a total digression, to be sure, but it all goes back to the idea of the Mishnah, chayav adam levarech al hara kederech shehu mevarech al ha'tova, and that's the bechina of tefillas arvis rishus, lahagid babayker chastecha v'emunascha baleilais. That is why the morning is emes v'yatziv. God's truth is firm and standing upright, and at night it is emes v'amuna. I have emunah. Maariv is the prayer of emunah. It's a very, very great thing. So in that sense, we have actually some very interesting connections to this parsha. This parsha, of course, in fact, the whole Talmud Devorah is connected to this parsha because the Yud Gimel Midos of Rachman. But this parsha, we have the Chet HaEgel. And with the Chet HaEgel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to destroy Am Yisrael and make a private covenant with Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? He tells Moshe, I'll make you a big nation. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu says, how can you destroy the nation? You made a covenant with Avram that you will make their children into a great nation. Right? Moshe is using this logical argument. And Hashem has a logical argument back. Okay, Moshe, you're a descendant of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I'll make you the great nation, and I'll destroy them. So Moshe could have had this private deal with the Almighty, but Moshe says, nope, I don't want any private deals. I'm with them. Either you keep them as a nation and I'll go along for the ride, or if you're going to destroy them, destroy me. Moshe did not want to survive without the Jewish people surviving along with him. Yeah.
At that point, Moshe gets to ask to see Hashem, and that's maybe the closest like any Jew is like, come. So is Hashem pleased with Moshe for that, the same way that he's pleased with Abraham for like trying to defend Sodom and Gomorrah? Is that?
Yeah. So this is what I want to talk about. So Moshe Rabbeinu was negotiating with God, etc. According to the way Chazal reconstruct the chronology, although it's not explicit in the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu actually spent 3 40-day periods in Har Sinai. The first 40 days was Matan Torah, and that's when he came down on the 17th of Tammuz, saw the Egel, broke the luchos, or some say he didn't break the luchos, some say the letters flew off the luchos. And then the luchos were too heavy for him to carry. So that's a machlokas. Did he break the luchos, or did the luchos fall away from him because he couldn't carry them? But that's the 17th of Tammuz. That's the first tragedy of the 17th of Tammuz, the Chet HaEgel Nishtaber HaLuchos. So he then went up a second 40 days. And that's where he prayed with Hashem, and that's where they negotiated. And then the last 40 days is Rosh Chodesh Elul to Yom Kippur, when he came down with the second luchos. That was a sign of divine forgiveness. But in the middle of their negotiations, he asks Hashem a question. He says to Hashem, show me your ways. Hodieni na esdrachacha. Show me your ways. And Hashem says to Moshe, really one of the most mystical psukim in the Torah. He says to Moshe, behold, I will put you in the cleft of a rock, and I will put my hand over you, and I will pass my presence by you. And then, because one cannot see me and live, and then I will lift up my hand, and you will see me from the back, but you will not see me from the front. V'ra'isa es achorai, upanai lo yeira'u. Now, exactly when that occurred, again, some say it occurred all the way back Yom Kippur, later. Okay, but second time, third time, end of third time. chronologically, it's very hard to pinpoint an exact point when that occurred. But what is this idea? You will see me. First of all, what does Moshe mean? Show me your ways. And what does Hashem mean? I will cover up your eyes, and you will see me from the back, and you will not see me from the front. So the Rambam explains the whole thing as more of a philosophical issue, that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to truly understand the nature of God. He understood, remember the Rambam's famous idea that we have no idea what God is. God can only be described by negation. Philosophers call this the doctrine of negative attributes. I know what I am. I'm mortal, I'm finite, I'm divisible. So I can say whatever I am, God is not. God is not mortal, God is not finite, God is not divisible. So I can only define God by excluding him from human characteristics. But I don't know what God is. In fact, what does it mean, not divisible exactly? If God has a hand, then what does that mean? So that's the famous doctrine of what are called negative attributes. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to understand God not by negation. This is what the Rambam says. He wanted to have a clear, absolute picture. I don't mean a visual picture, but a spiritual picture of what is the nature of God. And God essentially says to him, you can't perceive that. You'll see it from the back. Like if I see you from the back, I don't really know how you look. I have an approximation. I can reconstruct you from the back, but I don't really have a clear picture of what you are. So according to the Rambam, the basic idea is this was all a metaphoric communication that you're not going to understand my nature. Okay, that's what the Rambam says. The Gemara in Brachos gives another interpretation, which is not really inconsistent, but it's a more specific interpretation. That Moshe was not just asking for a general understanding of God, but Moshe had a specific question. And the specific question is the workings of divine justice. Why do righteous people suffer? Why, if God is compassionate and God is fair and God is just, then why is it that so many good people go through so many difficult things and so many evil people prosper? Is there a reason for this? Is there a justification for this? Now again, you could actually say that this is a specific question that is also asking what is the nature of God, but the Gemara focuses it on a specific question. In other words, the question of theodicy, to use a fancy philosophical term, which is called Tzadik V'Ralo. Why do the righteous people suffer? And Rasha V'Tovlo, and the Rishaim prosper. This is what the book of Iyov is about. But Moshe asked Hashem. So when Hashem passes by, and he says, you will see me from the back, the Chassam Sofer is Masber, that he's telling Moshe, you will never understand things as they're happening. You will only understand things in hindsight. The old saying, hindsight is always 20/20. Now hindsight here means when Mashiach comes, at the end of time, you will understand how all of the bad was actually good, how all of the din was actually rachamim. But you're not going to understand it as it is happening. You will see me from the back. You will not see me from the front. That's how the Chassam Sofer understands the answer based on how the Gemara construes the question. Right? The Gemara construes the question of Hodieni na esterachecha as why is it Tzadik V'Ralai? V'Ra'isa es Achorai is the teretz of why it's Tzadik V'Ralai. So here we have to add one more thing. The Gemara then says that when Hashem says to Moshe, you will see me from the back, you will see the knot of Hashem's tefillin from the back. You will see Kesher Shel Tefillin. Now this is what the Gemara says. Everyone knows the Gemara. It's a mystical Gemara as well. Hashem wears tefillin. We wear tefillin, Hashem wears tefillin. In our tefillin are 4 parshios about the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, Yetzias Mitzrayim. And in Hashem's tefillin are psukim about the greatness of Am Yisrael. Mi ka'amcha Yisrael. Who is like your nation Yisrael? Goy Echad B'Aretz, a unique nation. Rav Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev used to say, because he was always someone who was seeking a defense for Bnei Yisrael. He always pleaded their case. He says, Hashem, if we drop your tefillin, we feel so bad. We pick up the tefillin, we kiss them, we take care of them. But we're your tefillin, and we're dropped on the ground, and we're stepped on, and we're kicked, and we're persecuted. You have to pick us up. You have to kiss us, and the like. So, we wear tefillin. Hashem wears tefillin. By the way, some of us from Kasha, if this discussion took place on Yom Kippur, how could Hashem wear tefillin? You don't wear tefillin on a Yom Kippur. Okay. Obviously, there's different dynamic here. Okay. But the Kasha is actually asked, because Baruch Hu is not meaning. But the answer, but I'll give you a quickie answer. A quickie answer is, it only became Yom Kippur when Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the Luchos, signifying that we were forgiven. So the day didn't start as Yom Kippur. So when Hashem is still talking to Moshe at the mountain, it's not Yom Kippur yet. It became Yom Kippur in the middle of the day when Moshe Rabbeinu comes down. I mean, that's actually an interesting teretz. That's the only Yom Kippur that became Yom Kippur. Not at the start of the day, but in the morning or the middle of the day, whenever Moshe Rabbeinu actually came down. Okay. Now, what is the significance of the knot in back of the tefillin? So now let's look at the tefillin shel reish. Tefillin shel reish has 2 straps that hang in front of you. They both come from the knot in the back of your head. One strap is to the right, and one strap is to the left. In Kabbalah, we've learned this in the Ramak a number of times. The direction of right corresponds to chesed, and the direction of left corresponds to Devorah. So Hashem says, you're asking me, why do bad things happen to good people? Your mistake is you're looking at the front of the tefillin, where there's chesed and there's Devorah, and you're asking, how come Rishoyim sometimes get the chesed, and Tzaddikim sometimes get the Devorah? But when you see me from the back, you will see that the chesed and the Devorah both originate from the same place. The same place. So even what you think is Devorah is in reality chesed. That's the meaning. You will see me from the back, and then you will understand. So again, there are 2 aspects here, but they lead to the same conclusion. The Chassam Sofer says back means hindsight. You will understand it after everything passed. That's the Chassam Sofer. The other pshat, and again, I don't have I don't remember who said it, but the other pshat is, looking at the back is a specific reference to the Kesher Shel Tefillin. Now, those of you that remember in your prior lives when Anim Zemiros was recited every Shabbos, here we only do it Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, but the acrostic of Anim Zemiros, which is, by the way, is a very, very mystical song, poem that is based totally on Kabbalah. So what does it say? The os pei ro olai, God's glory, His glory, is upon me. Pe'eri, my glory, alav, is upon him. Tefillin is called pe'er, glory. So, pe'ero alai, God's glory is upon me. I wear the tefillin that proclaims God's glory. Pe'eri alav, my glory is on him. The tefillin that Hashem wears declares the glory of Bnei Yisrael. Right? So, pe'ero alai, pe'eri alav, is tefillin. And there's even a reference to the back knot of the tefillin in the kuf. Kesher tefillin, hera li'anav. Li'anav, Hashem showed the knot of the tefillin to the humble one, which is Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So there are two references to Hashem's tefillin in Anim Zemiros. One to the idea generally that Hashem wears tefillin that glorify Bnei Yisrael, and the other is a specific reference to the knot of the tefillin for Ra'isa Sacharai Upanai Lo Yera. Okay, we'll stop here.
Thank you for listening to this Awesome production. To find out more and to partner in our mission, please visit ohr.edu.